a WWE Thai deserter who became a recluse and then a family man. The complicated fate of Mark Gursky. Greetings. Today we will remember the story of one deserter who for many years left civilization and went to live in the forest. What valuable trophy the hermit found in the taiga, which saved him from many dangers. Is it true that the Siberian took away to his dwelling a girl who soon became pregnant? And why, years later, the authorities left alone a man who committed a crime against his homeland? Be sure to watch the video to the very end. It will be very interesting and informative. Mobilization in the USSR. Let's first understand the situation that was characteristic of the Soviet Union in 1943. During this period, the people of our country perfectly understood that the victory over fascism is already close. This was due to the grandiose victories of the Red Army. The fighters successfully fought one battle after another. That is why in the USSR, the top leadership decided on another mobilization to finally finish off the enemy. Reception centers for recruits worked around the clock. However, at that time, the main crime against the people and the motherland did not do without. As you have probably guessed, we are talking about desertion. Not every soldier could show courage at that moment. In order not to take the risk of joining the ranks of the Soviet army, they had to evade service and even go far away from civilization. One of such deserters was 23-year-old Mark Gursky. Adaptation to harsh living conditions. Do you agree that it is almost unrealistic to live in the Siberian forests alone? And when it comes to the harsh climate of the taiga, wild animals, and the lack of all human benefits, it even becomes frightening. But Mark Gursky, who once and for all deviated from military service, made an irrevocable decision. It remains only to adapt to the difficult conditions of life in the forests. We draw attention to the fact that Gursky had relatives living in these places. Mark first got to the Ubinsky district of the Novosibirsk region. But to stay with relatives and friends, the deserter considered it an inappropriate decision. And in general, it was dangerous to get caught by anyone. They could easily seize him and hand him over to the authorities, or simply inform the necessary officials about the whereabouts of the criminal. So, Mark Gursky settled in the upper reaches of the Siberian river Tartus. But for his own safety, he had to change his places of residence. Gursky tried to choose remote corners of the taiga. In addition, his route followed previously unknown paths, so that it was possible to confuse others. Mark's dwellings were huts and tents built almost all around the perimeter. As food, already being a hermit, Gursky chose game, fish, and even large animals. Thanks to his good health and unrivaled physical parameters, Mark could effortlessly take on a bear with a single knife. For the winter, the hermit stocked up on berries and mushrooms, prepared firewood, cooked wild animal skins, and even had his own vegetable garden. A valuable find. You will be surprised, but Gursky even had a machine gun with him. The deserter found this useful trophy in the woods when he accidentally stumbled upon a downed warplane. Since the action unfolded during the war, such a find became quite common. The machine gun, as well as ammunition for it, came in very handy in practice. First, Mark could shoot a large animal while hunting. Secondly, the machine gun became a defensive tool in case of all sorts of external threats. Of course, the hermit deserter did not walk around with such a formidable weapon. He installed a machine gun on one of his huts. As a result, it turned out to be something like a duty. In addition to the air machine gun, Gursky discovered something else. He took possession of a direct current generator. In those days, it was called a dynamo. So in addition to the fire, serving as the main source of light in the dark, Mark used this useful object. The question of lighting was solved in good time. Wilderness and the first access to people. Some of you may ask, how many years did Mark Gursky spend in such places? The hermit spent 10 years in solitude. Initially, Gursky aimed to spend the rest of his life in the taiga. And so it was for several years. It would seem that the hermit deserter had finally gone wild and was forever alienated from civilization, as well as from all human benefits and values. Alas, the need for socialization soon made itself felt. It began with the fact that Mark Gursky, at his own risk, began to communicate with the local population. Since the hermit was a hunter, he periodically exchanged the meat of wild animals for household items and medicines. The villagers later nicknamed Gursky the Siberian Tarzan for his lifestyle. They also called him the Siberian Robinson. Mark's social needs did not end there. The man soon realized that he could not do without the most important thing, a woman, who could share with him the years spent in the taiga. And such a case happened, the creation of a family. The action unfolded as follows. One day, Gursky came close to the settlement. Suddenly, he saw the girl went into the forest for mushrooms. Mark carefully tracked her down and kidnapped her. Before that, the hermit had time not only to study the entire area, but also camouflaged his huts and dugouts. And to make sure that the girl was not found, Gursky moved with her confusing route. As you can already guess, once the hermit deserter found himself a lady, it was not difficult for him to get a family. For this purpose, Mark kept the girl in one of his dwellings until the bride became pregnant. It is also important that the girl was already looking for locals. However, the result of the search did not lead to anything. The question arises, how did the events unfold later? It is not possible to answer exactly, and therefore there are several versions. The first of them says that Gursky realized that his child needs all the vital conditions. Such conditions a man could not create away from civilization. Therefore, Mark had to take the girl out to people and thus let her go. The second version is that the bride still managed to escape from her groom. Then, the captive was able to inform people about the location of the hermit. After that, the locals, along with the police, formed an expedition. This time, it was successful, and Mark Gursky was caught. Further fate of the Siberian Robinson. Unfortunately, the exact version of how the fate of the deserter and hermit, there is no. Someone says that Mark Gursky received a real term and spent several years in confinement. After that, by the way, he went to the Krasnodar region, where thanks to his skills, he got the post of hunting foreman. And someone claims that after 10 years, Gursky was not brought to criminal responsibility, and therefore he was released. Mark returned to his wife and growing child. The whole family left in an unknown direction. In any case, it is unknown where Mark Gursky is buried and whether someone visits his grave. Plus, there are many questions about the fate of his family members. Nevertheless, it is known for sure that during the years of the World War II and after its end in the forests of Siberia lived such a man, who earned a reputation not only as a deserter, but also as a hermit. Conclusion. Thus, the life path and further fate of Mark Gursky was influenced not only by the war. In isolation from society, the deserter and hermit realized the necessity of life's goods and values. Although he managed to create a family, people have not forgotten about the crime against the people and the motherland. And therefore, most people believe that such personalities have no place in the usual civilized society.